The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with my co-host Dan Rylance, and while every other talk show in America is talking about O.J. Simpson, we're going to do something a little different. But something much more important as well. We're joined this evening by two members of the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education, Amy Weinsheim to my left, and to her left, Karen Bowen. And the primary thing we're going to be talking about tonight is, as you can probably well imagine, is the boundary issue and the 10-year facility plan that the district has been wrestling with for what seems like forever. So anyway, thanks to both of you for being here. And we'll just let the audience know up front that due to some scheduling things, we're going to end their section of the show probably about 45 minutes into the program. So anyway, you guys met last Wednesday during your regular school board meeting, but you met Tuesday night to hear public input on you know, the different plans and so forth. And I guess one of the first things that I want to talk about is, and we don't need to spend a great deal of time on this, but there's been concern in the community expressed by some about the short notice that was given for Tuesday night's meeting. So can you just let viewers know why there was the notice that there was and why it wasn't longer?
Well, it was, I'm not in charge of public notices, but I know it was publicly noticed the correct amount of time. And then every school sent home a flyer to every child on Monday. To my knowledge, only one school failed to meet that deadline, I guess you could call it. And so everybody in the school district should have known Monday afternoon if they had not seen it someplace else on the website or in the newspaper that we were having the meeting. We also had discussed it, and I don't know that it was firm, but the previous week at the ASC CRT meeting, which was held on Thursday, we had discussed the fact that we were probably going to split the meeting up so that we were not working on the facilities or the attendance area question at 11 o'clock at night, given the amount of people who have been coming to the meetings and speaking and the amount of time it takes for our business meeting to get through that amount of public comment. So many of the folks who were at the ASC CRT meeting knew that that was probably coming. But you know, life is busy, so they may not have, that may not have registered or stayed with them for the whole week.
The meeting on Tuesday was not televised, to the best of my knowledge. What kind of a turnout did you have?
30, 40 people. The boardroom was full.
Okay.
It was not...
it wasn't overflowing. It
no, it wasn't overflowing.
Wasn't a standing room attendance.
I do know that the fact that we were going to do that, split the meeting up like that, was mentioned, and I grant you it was only mentioned, but it was mentioned in the coverage in the Northwestern on Friday morning, because I did check that. And said, okay, that's good, that's in there. But
all right. And so, as we mentioned, the public was able to speak Tuesday night, not Wednesday night. Wednesday night during your board meeting, after the, after the other stuff, you guys kind of had sort of a little workshop, if you will.
We did indeed, a facilitated workshop.
Yes. Where you met with Dale Feinauer.
Yes.
He's from the university, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And he was sort of, in what role would you call him? A moderator, if you will, or kind of a facilitator?
He calls himself a facilitator.
Okay,
so.
All right. And primarily you discussed two options. Option E, and that had gone before the school board last month. Then it went back to the planning team for more work. But now correct me if I'm wrong. Option E shifts a group of students from the eastern part of the Oakwood Elementary School attendance area, the section of the Franklin School attendance area, north of Witzel, and the northernmost part of the Roosevelt attendance area to Roosevelt Primary, Merrill Intermediate, and Oshkosh North.
Right.
Right.
Okay. And then the other option that you guys discussed has sort of been dubbed the Jefferson option, and that would shift part of the new Jefferson attendance area north of 14th and east of Michigan to Merrill Intermediate, and then they would go on to North High School. And the Jefferson students currently go from Jefferson to South Park and on to Oshkosh West. Okay.
Very
Well,
good, Cheryl.
Well, Superintendent Heilman really prefers option E
Yes.
over the Jefferson option. And why?
Well, I
Because
think
I mean, he's told you
Yes,
guys.
he
why.
has.
Yes,
And
so-
we asked him specifically, as
And-
the educational expert in the district, we want to know what he wants.
which
what he
one do you
thinks.
prefer?
Yes.
And he gave a he didn't give a real in-depth answer at our meeting last week, but he did say he felt option E put the district in a better position to serve its students. There are some concerns about moving the Jefferson attendance area into the North attendance area because of some socioeconomic issues and the disparity that could be created, the gap. There is solid research out there about how socioeconomic status gaps in particular, as they widen, actually do create some educational disparities as well, due to programming needs and how to best service a population that might have some serious poverty issues.
Okay. Well, we'll get into some of the specifics of both the options, I'm sure, and I also want to address some of the plans that others in the community have kind of brought up. I know Jim Fitzhenry from the Northwestern made several suggestions that I want to talk about and so forth. As it turns out, you guys are kind of at a deadlock, if you will. I mean,
Well, it's interesting because we have a majority of the board that favors option
Yes.
E. However, the thinking is that if we need to be a solid board on this if we plan to pass a referendum
Right.
down the road.
And just so those in the audience who may not be aware can be up to date, board members Weinsheim and Bowen, along with Kavanaugh and Tom McDermott, prefer option E.
Yes.
And then Ben Schneider II, Wayne Traska, and Dan Becker like the Jefferson option.
Right. And in the ratings at the workshop, you were, I think, 7 and 8s on E and 3s, I think, on Jefferson.
Yes.
And the reverse of the other 3 was
Yes.
they gave all 3s to E, and we're in the 7 and 8 on. So it's
Jefferson, right.
Yeah, just to throw that in. But
Sure.
it was almost
Yeah.
mathematically, each way.
It was, that's true.
So as it turns out, you guys are going to go to a retreat at the district office on October 1st.
That's right.
From 10 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon, I
4,
believe?
I think 4.
I think 4.
And that will be open to the public, but
Yes.
will they be allowed to speak?
And
at
I
that?
believe it's going to be up at the Martin.
Not anymore. It's going to be in Oshkosh.
Oh,
Martinson and Isley.
they changed it on
well,
me already.
They decided to hold it in Oshkosh because it's more convenient for at least one board member. And I think we now have, for a bit, we weren't going to have Ben Schneider was not going to be able to come, but apparently now he is. And Martinson and Isley can bring their, was referred to as equipment. I assume that's some sort of technology, some sort of computer program type of thing that they will bring, and they can do some of their figuring, their geocoding, as it's called, and look at some of the streets. They have the technology to look at street by street kind of analysis, and they will be bringing that to the district so we can do it right in Oshkosh.
Okay. So the public is allowed to come to this.
Yes.
Will they be allowed to speak?
Probably not,
No.
because
Okay.
it's a retreat.
It's a
Okay.
working
It's
retreat
a
for the board.
workshop type
Right.
thing again. So.
Yes.
And it will be in the school district office.
Yes,
Is that
it'll be in the
correct?
boardroom.
Let's review the time and place again.
10 to
date?
4.
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
On Monday, October 1st.
Okay. And the Eagle Street at the school
Yes,
district
right.
office.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
with all that, throw out some questions, Dan.
Amy and Dennis Kavanaugh, you were with us probably early summer.
Yes.
And I asked the question to both of you then, you know, were these preliminary plans at that time? And you said yes, and you said, you know, by September, October, we'll be back with, you know. So I just want to read through, you know, I sense that, and I don't mean to pick on you, people work hard, but, you know, there's some really sort of frustrating comments that I picked up. Dennis Kavanaugh, who's hardly a person who gets angered, he was quoted in the paper as saying, "I'm so frustrated I could spit."
Yes, I
Now,
heard
for
him say
Dennis,
that. Yeah.
for Dennis to say that,
Yes.
that's quite a big spit. I mean,
Yes.
that he doesn't, you know. And another board member, unidentified, was quoted as saying, "The board simply has become dysfunctional." So you've got two board members that are really experiencing frustration. And then Stu Rickman, the executive editor of the Northwestern, has devoted 2 Sunday columns to the issue. And his first one simply said, "Throw out the white towel, surrender." And he blames the school board for the impasse. Second Sunday, he kind of moved away from that, saying that you're hopelessly split, so why discuss that? And he threw out 2 suggestions. Why don't you have a one-time referendum to exceed the revenue caps to maintain the academic programs? And 2, you got to cut athletic programs if you have to make deep cuts, you know, in the budget. So, you know, there's just, do you feel that? I mean, clearly you're disappointed from when we talked, you know, in the spring.
I felt like Mr. Riekman's original column of "Just Give Up" was, I thought he made some very valid points that I agreed with, but giving up I thought was an inappropriate suggestion.
Yeah.
And I don't think that doing a one-time referendum to exceed caps just to maintain programs is a smart way to use our money.
Yeah.
We have to have our educational programs, and you need to find a way to sustain those without going to referendum. I think going to referendum for facilities to do bricks and mortar work, in my opinion, having experience with referendums in other cities, not here, they tend to have a better chance of following through. I agree we need to look at athletics as well, but it's not going to take care of the problem.
Right.
There's not enough money in athletics to take care of the problem.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That first of all, there's not enough money there's not enough money in athletics to take care of it. A lot of the money that not I wouldn't even probably say a majority, but much of the money that goes into athletics comes from booster clubs. People are completely devoted to it. I've had that suggestion thrown to me before. Take the athletics off the budget. It doesn't solve the problem.
There's definitely room there to you know not fund it to the degree that we do, or have deeper user fees, which would be interesting to see how that fleshed out before the board anyhow, since we have board members who feel that fees are inappropriate as well. Even though athletics is extracurricular and outside the academic day, some of those folks are big athletic supporters on the board. So
That'd be a tough sell.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
It would be a tough sell to the community.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
And I'm not. I'm a supporter of athletics. I support all extracurricular activities. I once said a long time ago that I really, what was the backbone of education? Well, music, art, physical education, athletics, which is, I only said that's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but one of the things that athletics provides the community is an opportunity to become a community. When you take a look at that Northwest football game, for example, it was a great game. You had this going back and forth. The place was packed. You know, that's something that we value very much in Wisconsin.
I want to go back to the 2 plans for a minute. You're both for Plan E. What is the major objection by the 3 who want the Jefferson plan with the E plan? What don't they like about the E plan?
The major objection, the only major objection I could identify, was that they didn't feel it was enough students, and that perhaps they weren't moving with enough of their neighborhood friends. You know, not everybody in your neighborhood is always your friend, but that was kind of the language that was
So more of a breakup
used.
of the neighborhood school concept with E? Is that what they're opposed to?
I think so.
Okay.
And just they strongly believe, as many of the parents who come forward to oppose Option E have said, that it's important for children to move through school with their peer groups from geographically nearby.
What are your main objections to the Jefferson plan? What don't you like about that plan?
Well, interestingly, from the parents and occasionally the board members, there have been some comments about transportation, moving through commercial areas, too far, those types of issues. And the Jefferson plan is very far. There are, board member pointed out, well, there are at least sidewalks, so people could ostensibly walk if they didn't have transportation. Well, it's a long walk, and from an average Jefferson attendance area student, you would be traveling through almost all commercial. Your entire travel time would be through almost all commercial to get to Merrill or North. So I have some difficulty with that. And then, as I said earlier, I share, and Mr. McDermott has spoken very eloquently about this, share the concerns about creating some issues of poverty and disadvantage at North High and causing a gap that could potentially create problems with programming. And what we're able to offer all students, and whether we can keep equity there, or are we going to see some disintegration?
I want to go back for just a second to this notion of that kids need to kind of follow their peer group through their school years, their formative years, if you will. You know, Amy, I think, and I didn't see the whole board meeting last week, but did you not bring up about where's the data to support that is a viable concern?
Yes.
And what was the response to that?
Well, to my knowledge, there really isn't data to support that there's educational significance to being in a school with your neighbor. Otherwise, we would have folks always advocating that you always go to school with your neighbor.
Yeah.
And nobody in administration offered up any research, and one of the board members said, well, I just have anecdotal stories of people that I know were unhappy of not being able to go to school with neighbors. The reality is that even in the neighborhood that I lived in, the boundary line was the street. So my kids, just on our street, across the street from each other, technically go to different schools, even though they live right across the street from each other, traveling to different schools. The 5 houses right in this little circle, one family actually had their kids in both parochial and public schools, so their own children were going to different schools. One family was using the charter school system. Our family was at Webster Stanley, and the other family was at Washington. And all of those families' children played together every day. Their relationship was not based on going to the same school. Their relationship was based on the fact that they lived nearby and of a similar age, that they could play together, run together, do the things kids do after school.
Well, you know, I understand why a parent would certainly want their kids, I suppose, to go to school with their neighborhood friends. You know, that would be great in an idyllic situation. But we don't have that here. We've got some serious concerns. You guys have a tremendously huge task ahead of you. And it just seems to me that, you know, maybe people aren't giving their kids enough credit. You know, kids, I think, are pretty resilient. And I think kids, when they're allowed to make friends, will make friends. Just as we all have to, you know, make new friends when we move on to college or to a new job or move to a new community. It may be harder for us as adults to do that.
I think it often is, because you don't have when you're a child going to school, you have a built-in network.
Sure.
Whereas adults don't have those built-in networks when they have to make those types of transitions.
Sure. And I mean, after all, the kids are there for an education, not socializing. I understand that being social is part of it, don't get me wrong, but it's about education. And if doing something like what you guys are proposing and considering here is going to help solve the problem, at least for the next umpteen years, hopefully, then I think we need to look at doing something.
Well, there's supposed to be another issue, and that is that the option E area is not a growth area, but there seems to be some difference of opinion on that between what the administration shows us and what the people in the neighborhood say. So I really don't know about that. I think the real concern, well, there are several real concerns that I have about Jefferson in addition to the ones that Amy mentioned, and that is many of the people, first of all, the people in option E are already bused, and for them to be on buses is, a bit further. Oshkosh is not that large, and I know people will argue with me. They're talking about taking 45 minutes to get from that neck of the woods to Merrill. I don't know. I don't think it would, but I'm not going to argue with that. But the kids in the Jefferson area are not bused, so the Jefferson plan doesn't save us as much money as option E would. Now 2 buses won't. They're not that expensive. But the other thing is that there's a lot of talk about parents going to their kids' extracurricular stuff and participating in schools. Many of the parents in the Jefferson area don't have a way to get to Merrill and North, whereas the people in option E, partly because of where they live in the suburbs, they can go. They can more easily go, and I know they talk about how difficult it will be, but I think it would be less difficult for them than for the parents. And the same is true with the kids. The kids can more easily get back to their they have parents who can pick them up. Their parents aren't working 3 jobs as much as likely. They're not as likely to be. I'm not saying that there aren't any people working 3 jobs, but there are more likely to be people working 3 jobs in the Jefferson area than in the option E area. Okay. I think that's something we have to consider, because what we're supposed to be looking at is creating an educational system that's best for kids, for all kids.
And for the entire, right, it's servicing the entire community, doing what's best for the entire community.
There was a gentleman who came to one of the meetings, and he suggested something called option E2. And in that option, it would not take students from Franklin, but would instead pull them from Oakwood, since that school is obviously overcrowded. And then basically he said that because the Sawyer Creek subdivision is divided from the area north of 21 by a lot of commercial development and 21, and then taking one neighborhood from north of 21, starting at 41, and moving west until the correct number of students is reached, is a plan that kind of made more sense. Is there a reason that the board hasn't really given that a whole lot of consideration, or what's the problem with something like that?
Well, at the moment there is, and I think one of the advantages of the board working on the plan, I don't really think that we can do any better than anybody else, but I think one thing that we can do is we have set parameters for the people who are working on the plans. And one of the parameters is, and I don't know what anybody else calls it, but if this is, say, Oakwood, we don't want to make a C around Oakwood. We've tried to keep numbers going that way, assuming that that's east, to people who can't see the school, not looking at the school. In other words, the people who wouldn't be bused would still be going to that school. And then if you go west, then you're going around it like this, and that logically doesn't make that much sense. Now, that is a parameter. I'm not suggesting that this will happen, but that is a parameter that the board, if we're working together as we go through this, we could say, all right, as a board, we agree, we'll lift that parameter. Whereas the people who are working on it, Shelley Musa and others, can't lift our parameters while they're working. They can't quick call us all together at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon and say, can we lift that parameter? Right. So that's what's, there's nothing really wrong with E2, but that's the current thinking, at least from my perspective.
Then before I let Dan jump back in here, Jim Fitzhenry from the Northwestern proposed what he called the sensible scenario. In a nutshell, his thoughts were this: build a new school facility west of 41 or add on existing facilities, close the targeted schools that were identified, I'm assuming, by PMP, fix up the remaining school facilities to address the equity issues raised in PMP's report, dump the switch to a K3 4-8 reconfiguration, balance enrollment at the high schools by compromise, and then schedule one referendum. You're laughing at the word compromise. I know where you're going with that.
First of all,
tell us about his plan. What's wrong with his plan?
Can I
Other than the problem that you guys don't seem to be able to compromise very well.
I want to jump right in first.
One thing I want to say is he has, and I don't know if he really means it in that order, but we cannot build a new school without a referendum. That is not possible. You can see the results of what happens when you build without a referendum when you look at the addition, the tin gym as they call it, at Washington, the addition at Oak Lawn, And the third addition without a referendum is the front elementary piece at Webster. And that's the best of the three. They did learn as they went along, but all of that was done within the budget. And that is not possible anymore for lots of reasons. So then, Amy, you had something you were going to say?
I get very frustrated with the folks who say just build another school on the west side. The school district takes a lot of heat, I think unfair heat, particularly since I have become more enmeshed in board business and have a better understanding of school finances and revenue caps and living within that budget. We take a lot of heat for being frivolous with money, and anybody who really knows where the Oshkosh Area School District ranks in spending, we are not a frivolous school district. So to suggest that we should abandon buildings that we could do work on and continue to have students in and just build new on the west side, we still have students on the east and the north and the south side of Oshkosh that must be educated and should be educated in facilities that are as nice as our best facilities. And I find it inappropriate and fiscally irresponsible to suggest we abandon buildings and just build on the west side. It just doesn't, that to me is not a sensible solution. It's really being very short-sighted. And the west side eventually will, even if it were completely built out within 10 years and every single family with small children lived there, in 20 years, those children would now be out of the system and the population would be moving to the other side of town because that is how neighborhoods roll through and age.
What about this K through 3, 4 through 8 reconfiguration? I mean, why are you guys so determined that this, because people are not happy with that either.
Well, and I'd love to address that because I love that I was on the committee that looked at that, and we looked at the grade configurations. We started looking at grade configurations as a way to solve some of our facility problems. And the more we looked into various districts around the nation that had the research on these districts that had the K through 3 and then the 4 through 8. Now there are very few school districts that do this, but that is no reason for us to say, well, nobody else does it, so we can't do it, or we've always done it this way, so we must continue to do it this way. The K through 3 school has some really interesting potential in that it becomes, even though it's a larger school, and we had already said that we wanted our schools to be larger because we wanted more than one section at each, more than 1 or 2 sections at each grade level for lots of reasons that I could go into, but I won't take up all the time doing that. But it becomes then a nurturing school where the educational leader is, and not that we don't have nurturing schools now, but the educational leader in the K through 5 school has to be considering all the time getting kids ready for 6th grade. And just as the middle school principal has to be considering getting kids ready for high school. A K through 3 school, the educational leader, i.e. the principal, can spend all his or her time worrying about getting the children in that grade level prepared to go on. One of my kids' teachers once said to me, the curriculum explodes at 4th grade, which is very exciting if that's what you're really interested in. Of course, that's how it should be. But in kindergarten through 3rd grade, you want them to be concentrating on the basics. You want that environment to be really concentrating, honing the reading, the math skills, and all the other skills that they do then. I think it has lots of potential to provide a really good base. Not that we don't give a good base now, but I think it has an option to notch, set it up a notch. And I can see that Dan does not agree with me.
You know, since Amy and Dennis were on last time, I've gone out of my way. Every time I run into an elementary school teacher, I ask them point blank. And I don't know the numbers, but it's 20 or 30. Not one of them has anything good to say about the K through 4A program. Are you asking teachers?
We had our committee was mainly made up of teachers.
Boy. And I asked you last time, you know, Amy, you've got kids at Webster Stanley Elementary, just won another award for what, the 3rd continuous year?
5th year.
5th year, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Why do you want to tinker with that?
Well, Webster's, the facility is not what is winning the award. It's the leader. The leadership, the leader, the culture that has been created.
In a K through 5. school.
And the leader of that school, big believer in the K-3, 4, 8.
On my talks with her, she's been pretty neutral.
Well, it's going to be a lot of
she's-
work.
She's
It's
not
going to be a
been
lot of
neutral
work.
when I've talked to her.
I think it's a hard thing for a principal to say publicly to someone who might say something like me.
She has been very positive
go,
when I've
Dan.
talked to her. And she might not be happy that I'm saying it, but she was very positive when because she was one of the first people I asked. I told you, I was very honest.
Yes,
It
I know.
took my breath away when I first heard
Yeah.
it. But mainly because it is a big change, and change is hard.
And teachers don't like change. I understand
Well,
that.
and
No.
it's not what we're used to.
Yeah.
But I think we have, we always worry about what we'll lose.
Yeah.
And for example, at Webster and all our other K through 5 schools, we have some really excellent programs, and the atmosphere is good, but I think we have lots to gain. The other thing is then when you get the 4th through 8th
And
graders,
that's the piece that I was most excited
Yeah.
about. K-3, I think, is almost.
lots of districts have primary schools, and that's what this is. A primary school, it's an intermediate school, and then you have the high school. But the 4-8, and I'll let Amy talk about that since that's her baby. But I really love the idea of having the 4th and 5th graders kind of in a wing by themselves. Now they have gone on from being kind of the little kids at the K through 3 school to going into this place where the curriculum explodes, and that we hope to and we plan to. The 6th grade would then be separated off, as we should be doing anyway in a true middle school concept. And then the 7th and 8th graders, they would be really groomed for high school.
For that high school transition. And that's what I found most intriguing about going to a K-3, 4-8 was looking at that transition piece for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. I have always felt like 6th graders they're still children, and we tend to treat them as small high schoolers as soon as they hit that middle school bubble, and this provides a different opportunity.
I know we're running short on time, and she wants to do something on emails. I have one more question. You people, the 4, have to compromise, because those 3 have no record on that school board of compromising. So if you want to go from 4-3 to 5-2 or 6-1, the Henry Clays have to come from your side of the equation. They're not going to come from the other side. Is that a fair reading of the politics of the board?
I wouldn't say that.
I don't
When
know
has Ben Schneider II made a compromise on the school
I'm not.
board? No, I'm serious.
I understand
That's
what
the
you're
reality
I
of,
do. I actually believe that the K-3, 4-8 was a 6-1 vote,
Yes,
and
it was.
and Mr. Schneider did indeed say he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't want to
know
misquote him,
that,
but
but-
paraphrasing, I think he said something to the effect that he wasn't completely sure of this, but in the spirit of moving forward and the fact that people, particularly our team that brought that information forward, and they did have lots of research to back up their
powerful.
idea. He voted for that plan.
you would admit that the goal is to move from a 4-3 vote to something larger, right?
Right.
That's what you want to try to accomplish.
Right.
Okay.
My goal is to come up with the best plan. If
Exactly.
these 2 plans to make sure that our children achieve at as high a level as they can.
So you roll the dice at 4-3 if you think it's the best plan.
If someone else if someone could prove to me that the Jefferson plan would improve, enhance the performance in the district, I would vote for it. I haven't seen it.
Well, very quickly, one of the things that Stu Rickman from the Northwestern had suggested was buying some FEMA trailers that were no
Yes.
longer being used.
Actually, he's not the first. I had actually heard that from someone else.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I mean, Amy's chuckling, but
No,
I mean, is there some possible situation there where that would
That would be awful.
It would be.
yes,
I
it
went.
would,
I went
and it
to.
might
I went to
bring
school
parents
at a
to
school
a better
that
sense
used
of-
trailers.
Me too.
And
Okay.
I actually,
just,
but we're from a
I
different.
would
era.
hate to see us be
would too.
reduced to that.
I would
Okay.
too.
They were very cold in North Dakota.
They were very hot in California.
Another thing very quickly here, Tom McDermott had suggested using a person's mother's birth
Loved
date.
it.
And to address any concerns on the part of the viewers, because a lot of people have different kinds of mothers, this would be the mother who is listed on your birth certificate. That mother's birth date would determine where you would go to school. Some people in the community have sort of poo-pooed that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I said right at the meeting, I loved it. I mean, I think, I have said this before, I think that there is some divisiveness in our community, that having something, when it comes to our high schools in particular, and attendance areas, and that just levels the playing field. It's not about where you live or what street you're on. We have 2 good high schools, and you go where the
That was the great
says.
compromise for your meeting last week.
I loved it. I loved it, but I was the only other one who loved it.
I noticed that.
I had mixed emotions about it.
Want to touch on emails here for a little bit, and it'll have to be just a little bit so we can get you guys out of here on time. But recently, your Director of Business Services, Jason, left. There was a lot of speculation as to why he may have left. And one of the reasons that I have heard from people is because the district, including Jason, has been inundated with emails and requests from a former school board member. And this former member is asking for all kinds of documentation. He's wanting things reproduced in special formats that he can decipher. Apparently, this is what I'm being told. Now, information that I got through the district was that since May and through yesterday, Ron Heilman had received something like 261 emails from this man. They've responded to 77 so far. And I've read a lot of the emails, and I got to tell you, I think that for someone who, when he was on the school board, who said that he was a fiscal conservative, I think that this is eating up a lot of man hours, and just, it's nuts. I mean, I'm all about, having things open, but how many man hours has been spent on this so far? And what has the cost been in reproducing all the things that he wants? And is he bearing that cost?
He by law, the district can charge him for
Okay.
it when it's over a certain number of pages. I think our policy is like 5. And I don't know that he has actually paid. I don't think that they have. I think they've sent him letters saying, this is what it'll cost you, and I don't think he has responded. And sometimes some of those things are in the thousands of dollars too, or over $1,000.
He has been given several
He's
documents.
been given a lot. The documents that can be given to him without having to recreate something or reproduce something that's numerous pages. Yes, he has. So
Okay. Was that part of the frustration? Had you heard at the administration level, was that part of the reason why Jason left?
I don't want to speculate on why Jason left, because Jason clearly stated that publicly and in private as well, he was leaving because he wanted to spend more time with his family.
Okay,
but he did leave without a job.
Well, it just, like I said, Dan and I both read the emails, and you thought that they were threatening. They were abrasive. They were nasty in some cases.
Yeah, you asked the question, how much time does the school district have? How much time does this man, he must be doing this all the time.
It seems like it, doesn't it?
Well, certainly the plethora of information requested would have significantly taken up working time that should be devoted to taking care of our current budget needs and taking care of our current facilities plan and taking care of our current buildings and grounds and transportation, which are all things that our director of finance oversees.
Sure.
It's a big job without being asked to provide documentation, particularly from budgets that he did not work on, and provide all kinds of extracurricular information.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with all that material. So anyway, we're going to let you guys go so you can get out of here and get off to your other things. But thanks very much, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.
Happy to be here.
All right. We're going to take a real short break, and when we come back, Dan and I will talk about who knows what. Maybe we will talk about EJ anyway. So, or I mean OJ. we'll be right back.
Option E and option J.
All right, hang on.
I couldn't practice my religion.
I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in Bowen, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. If you speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there.
For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here. I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want.
Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Back, and welcome back to the last 10 minutes or so here of Eye on Oshkosh, and we want to thank again Karen Bowen and Amy Weinsheim for being here in the first 40 minutes or whatever it was. Dan, do you think, I mean, I have my own opinion on this. I mean, this school board has been wrestling with boundary issues for as long as I can remember. They've been struggling with this most recent boundary issue situation and the reports that they've gotten from consultants and so forth for about a year. And they're still almost divided in half.
As the city is, Cheryl.
Yeah,
huh?
It's very true.
I mean, Becker and Dan Becker and Karen Bowen ran 30 votes separate, and you couldn't pick two diametrically opposed people on the current school board. But the voters picked those two.
Yep.
From different sections of the city. But,
you know, and so the city, you're right, and the city council too seems to be kind of divided, not as much as it used to be. But, you know, I guess I just don't know, and I don't want to be a negative person here or a naysayer. I just don't know that they're going to be able to sit down and between the 7 of them come up with a plan that they can all agree on. I don't even know if you can get 5 of them to agree on something. And, I mean, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, Karen Bowen at the end of the interview said that she was not as interested. She wants the best plan for the kids. She's already kind of said that this 5-2-6-1 for her may not be the issue, that she's going to stick with, you know, her plan. I just don't see a compromise.
No.
You know, I don't watch all school board meetings, but you know, it would be very hard for me to convince Dan Becker and Ben Schneider II my plan if they had another plan. I mean, I don't mean that insulting to them, but they're just fairly inflexible and quite negative on any proposals. For them to change, to go with the plan E, I think is unrealistic.
Well, I agree. I just don't see how they're going to get, you know, to where they need to be in order to effectively sell a referendum. And let's face it, that's where this is all sort of leading to. And I just don't know that it's going to be possible.
I don't either.
I would like to think that it is. I do think, and you and I talked about this earlier today, I think that the one thing that will come out of this retreat, and possibly workshops after that if they have more, will be a greater appreciation for what the district and the consultants have kind of done to this point. Because let's face it, this is a monumental task. And no matter which way you go with this, and no matter how you try and set boundaries, and no matter what schools you pick to close or to refurbish, you're not going to please everybody in this community. It's just not going to happen.
And they have a huge marketing sale if they go to referendum. If they've got tensions and frustrations now, wait till they get before the voters and they set a date for the referendum.
So I don't know. I would like to think that they can come up with some kind of a compromise. that the majority of them, I mean, we realize that they've got a majority now, but something more than 4 people, you know, will go along with. I just don't know that it's
I just have a feeling that the West High School change of sending more students to North High School rather than keeping them in West is sort of a joker card on this Texas Hold'em. And I thought Tom McDermott's attempt late in the meeting last week, it was late, to throw out the idea that let's forget, you know, the boundaries. Let's do it. I think it was West Bend. They send kids to their schools based on the birthday date of their mother. And, you know, I think Dan Becker said, what if they're all born in the same month or something like that? But it really caught the board by surprise. But it was a sincere attempt to get off of this Northwest thing, which I think is a subtext to this disagreement. Right. And I think it's creative. And I think he is sort of the Henry Clay, the compromiser on that board. Because at times he has voted with Becker and Schneider and certain things.
McDermott you're talking about.
Yes, McDermott, yeah. So I really think his leadership is really crucial. He's a good lawyer. He's low-key, but you know, he's thoughtful. And if anyone is going to get them off of a 4-3 vote, I think Mr. McDermott has the best ability to do that.
I know when I first heard it mentioned, I thought, birth dates. You know,
well,
and I'm sure that that's what a lot of people...
Yeah, particularly at 11 o'clock at night at the board meeting.
Yeah,
come on.
I just thought, what is that all about?
Right.
And then when I, you know, did a little more reading on it and thought about it a little bit more, I thought, well, you know, this may have some possibilities here. One thing, it would get away from having one group of neighborhood parents or a few groups of neighborhood parents upset. You know, you're probably going to have a lot of people upset, but it'll be proportionate around the city. You know, it'll be evenly displaced, if you will. So I don't know. I think that there are some definite possibilities to it.
What do you think of the K3-4-8 split?
I don't know. I don't really have, I guess, an opinion one way or the other, and maybe that's because I don't have kids in school. I don't know that many teachers, and I haven't really talked to a whole lot of them. But I know you're not a fan.
And the answer I get from teachers is it's really facilities driven. You can't make a really good pedagogical argument for it because there aren't that many schools that have data that you can say, well, it works. Rosendale is really not a great bit of evidence to support this. I talked to Ava McCall, who's professor of curriculum instruction, and she said, you know, I don't want to quote her, you know, poorly, but she said, you know, she doesn't know anything about it. You know, the literature just there isn't much literature on this split. So, you know, I think the real reason for it is not a better educational environment. I think it's because it fits the architect's plan for this is how we have to realign these schools and make additions here. I really think it's facilities driven, not academically driven.
Well, and that could be, but you know, would students be worse off going this route?
I don't think it matters.
You know?
I mean, to a great extent.
So if it doesn't matter, then why not try it if they're in that situation where they have to make a decision, and let's face it, that's where they're at.
Some of the older teachers in the community told me that the change to the middle school concept years ago was really a facilities issue. It wasn't a pedagogical issue, and it was driven because that's how the numbers worked in certain areas, and so they went to the middle school rather than the old junior high concepts. Who knows? I think the support or lack of support of the Northwestern is crucial in a referendum, and let's talk a little bit about Stu Rickman's, you know, 2 columns about that. You know, the newspaper will be a great asset or liability to the school board on whether this referendum passes or fails. I mean, people on local issues like this trust their newspaper, or at least they read their newspaper. And he's come out with, you know, pretty critical of the board, wave the white flag, give up, and he hasn't backed off of that.
No, in fact, his second editorial, you know, the following week, or maybe it was 2 weeks later.
I think it was back to back.
Was it?
I think so.
You know, that was even more adamant that they should give up, and you know, in fact, the headline for it was "Last Chance for School Board to Benefit from Free Advice." Right. You know. And he starts it out by saying, imagine how shocked I was when the Oshkosh Board of Education snubbed my well-intentioned advice last week. Yeah, last week. So, yeah, they were back to back.
This is not the first time he's been snubbed, I don't think.
But you know, I mean, I understand where he's coming from, because it does seem like they've been running at breakneck speed and yet getting nowhere for a long time.
Let me throw this at you. Remember when we interviewed Rickman and Alex back about the same time we did Amy, and he said, you know, by statute, the school superintendent can readjust boundaries by himself.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, that hasn't been tried yet, but that would eliminate all of this impasse. It might cost Heilman his job, but he does have the power as superintendent to do that. What would you think of that as an alternative?
Well, you know, I mean, he is being paid to be the expert.
Right.
He has attended school. We've spent good money on this PMP consulting firm out of, I guess, Green Bay they're located in. You know, and I think we need to probably start listening to some of the experts on this stuff. I'm not saying take what they have said, hook, line, and sinker, and you know, swallow it hook, line, and sinker. But I do think that we need to start paying a little bit more attention, and not be so reactionary to emotional pleas from citizens, parents, other board members, what have you. And I think that we can't let the issue of athletics play into this. And that was kind of the sense that I was getting over the birth date thing. And possibly even some of the other thoughts that had come up is that, you know, if you do certain things, athletics is going to somehow suffer. And I think that that's really kind of a selfish attitude. I understand that athletics is important to an awful lot of people, but this is education, and at some point you have to, you know, draw the line and say, okay, we're focusing on education here. Athletics has to take a slight back seat to this.
And a real difference with European schools where all athletics are extracurricular. They're not part of the school system. You join a club, whatever. Now, you know, people in the United States will argue, yeah, but it's not democratic because not everyone. Well, it's true with our sports here that not everyone participates either. So the Europeans have a totally different model on that. Let's go back to the emails for a sec.
Sure.
Let's hypothesize that you know, you and I are in the school office and we're getting just swamped with these emails every day. And you know, the clock is ticking, and don't you think we would have said somewhere earlier to call this person's bluff and say, we can't handle this? Or you're asking for things beyond just records. You're asking for us to recorrect records, and we're going to put a halt to it. Instead, I think their reaction has been very slow, if at all, and it may have cost them a good financial officer at a time when they really need a financial officer.
It may very well have, and again, that's just speculation, but that's what I've been hearing from some people.
Oh, me too, absolutely.
And, you know, so and it had to have factored into. You know, I'm sure that as he was thinking about whether or not he should leave or whether or not he should stay, I doubt seriously that he said, oh, well, you know, I've got 200 and some, or 261 emails here. Maybe I should stay so I can answer all these emails and get more. I mean, the man was only on the job 5 months when he announced that he was leaving, and at the time that he actually, you know, worked his last day, I think he was on the job 6 months. Now, and he had come here from out of town. So something happened to prompt him to leave, and this inundation of emails started in, well, I don't know exactly when it started, but just since May is when the 261 came in.
That'd
so
be a couple
between
months
May
after he started.
Yeah. And so, you know, it does give one pause for consideration there, that may very well be part of the reason.
When are you going to have the time to do all that? You're going to stay after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock 3 nights a week to answer 20 emails a day? Or
and again, I'm all for open records and things like that. I mean, you and I have been proponents of that in taking some of the actions that we've taken. But we've been reasonable about it. And, you know, you and I have both read a lot of these emails. And, you know, and the Northwestern has read a lot of these emails. And they're just, I don't think that this gentleman is being very reasonable in his approach. And the tenor of some of his emails I found, as I said earlier, to be very abrasive, very condescending, very in your face.
Absolutely.
And certainly not a way to get people to cooperate with you in any faster of a fashion than they absolutely, under the law, need to.
What is he going to do with all of these emails and all of these pages? I mean, is he building a paper house or something? I mean, what?
No, he wants to peruse through this, I'm sure, and who knows, maybe we'll even see him running for school board again.
Well, then we'll have to ask him about his emails, right?
That's true, and what he has garnered from all of this.
Yeah, what did he learn from it? You know, based on all those emails, give us a synopsis of 10 points that would improve the school district based on your 280 email requests.
Well, and one other point that should be made, yes, the school district, you know, any governmental body has to respond to requests like this, but there are certain things that they don't have to do. I mean, they can make reasonable charges for certain things, and they don't have to recreate documents in a format or fashion that you can understand. Just because you can't understand.
That's a subtext of some of his emails. He's wanting that reprogramming.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He wants them to recreate
absolutely.
Records.
Yeah. And they do not have to do that.
No, absolutely not.
And, you know, I would hope that they wouldn't be.
Right.
You know, but you're right about calling his bluff. I mean, if he's saying, well, I'm going to, for example, file a complaint with the district attorney's office or whatever, if you don't do A, B, and C, and A, B, and C aren't something that under the law you have to do, then let him file the complaint.
Right. I don't think the law is designed for this sort of abuse. You know, I think
you called it abuse, right?
It really is. And I would have said something like, well, we're going to hire a high school student to come in after hours and do your photocopying requests as much as we can. But we're not going to respond on a daily basis. This is beyond what we can do. We're going to charge you X cents per sheet over 20 or whatever, and we'll deal with it, but we're not going to deal with it as quickly as you want it to be dealt with.
Well, I understand wanting certain information,
sure,
but this just seemed to be above and beyond. It's almost like he wanted to intimidate the school district and the administration.
Absolutely. He did.
So, well,
you think? In a way?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But, well, this was a fun hour. I wish that we had had more time with Karen and Amy, but we'll have more time with other school board members in the future again. And you know, we've also got a show coming up next week with the Chancellor from UW-Oshkosh. Chancellor Wells will be here. So we're staying on the topic of schools for a couple of weeks here.
That's a good fall topic, Cheryl.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks again to both Amy and Karen for being here and, you know, taking the time out of their schedule that they were able to give us tonight. And Dan, thanks to you to the crew, and as always to all of you. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.